Welcome aboard TED Talks Cruises, the podcast where wanderlust meets wisdom. Join our two hosts on a cruising adventure full of laughter, learning, and luxury. Ken Conan is a cruise rookie. He's wide-eyed, full of questions, and maybe still figuring out which end is aft. Ted Blank is a seasoned cruise expert who's been there, done that, and he even has a preferred deck chair. Each week, Ted and Ken dive into the world of cruising, from picking the right itinerary to insider tips, their personal insights, and behind-the-scenes secrets. Whether you're planning your first cruise or you're a platinum tier cruiser looking for fresh perspectives, TED Talks Cruises brings relatable stories, helpful advice, and plenty of good vibes. So get ready to laugh, learn, and set sail. No passport required.
Hey, it's Ken Conan with TED Talks Cruises. I've got my expert with me. Of course, I'm the rookie. Our expert joining us today is Mr. Ted Blank. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and I'm Ted Blank. I'm the cruise expert and excited to be here today.
Yeah, we've got spring in the air right now. I'm just like bouncing around. I was feeling so good today. It's funny after the deep freeze and you come out and it's like, oh, springtime and we're talking cruises. It doesn't get any better than this.
Any better than this? No, absolutely not.
And pregame, you told me what we're doing today for our cruise, and I am jazzed about this. This is funny. I don't know if Shan's mentioned it in the office, but this is like on the top of the bucket list for us right now, and we are trying to figure out when and how are we going to do this. And I'm so excited to hear about it today from you and maybe get some ideas.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the Mediterranean today, and it is definitely on many people's bucket lists. You know, a lot of people who want to go to Europe and want to take a cruise, certainly the Mediterranean is at the absolute top of their bucket list.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd take a little tour of the Mediterranean, and, you know, as we do every time, we'll talk about the history and the natural beauty. We'll certainly talk about food and wine and things like that, and maybe give folks a few insider tips along the way as well.
Good stuff. So with most cruises, I know we can talk about and maybe do a pre-cruise stay. Hopefully I'm getting the lingo down here too. I feel like I'm dialing in here, Ted. I just said pre-cruise stay like it was nothing.
Yeah, and that's I think we bring this up on almost every episode because for many people going to Europe, the cruise is only part of the vacation.
That's right.
And so spending a little time before or after the cruise is part of the whole vacation. And the cruise we're going to talk about was one that I took about 2 years ago in August of 2023. And it started in Rome. And actually it started in the port for Rome, which is a little town called Civitavecchia. Doesn't matter to anybody.
Love that. Civitavecchia.
Yep, you hop on the ship in Civitavecchia and then you leave. And so if you want to see Rome, it's very common on a cruise to spend time in the city of Rome before the cruise.
Okay.
I think Rome is a great place to start or end a cruise because it is the perfect place to do that pre or post cruise program. And every cruise line offers some type of, kind of an off-the-shelf program that they have.
Sure.
And this particular cruise was with a company called Regent Seven Seas. They offer a fantastic 3-night program in Rome beforehand.
Okay.
So that's a great option. But I only had 2 nights.
Okay.
And so I had to do something a little bit different. And so I created a customized program just for myself on this cruise. And so we got to see and do things that we wanted to do, not things that everybody else was going to do. And it just made for a really incredible experience in Rome.
I love it. When I think of Rome, I think of there's just so much to do. Like literally my mind right now is just racing. Like there's so much. Like
there is so much to do. It wasn't my first time in Rome.
Perfect.
And so that's something I think to when we talk to clients about trips like this, we want to talk to them. Hey, is this your first time there? Have you been there before?
Yeah.
Because if it's your first time there, the cruise line program may be an excellent choice for you because you're going to hit the highlights. You're going to hit those couple major attractions that every first time viewer or every first time visitor really wants to see. I've been there a few times.
Yep.
And so I wanted to see some really specific art and architecture related things.
Okay.
And something about Italy that's different than other European countries is, most of the art in Italy was religious art. It was created to be put in churches.
Interesting.
And in Italy, most of that art is still in the churches. It isn't in museums. And so unlike France, England, Holland, where a lot of the art that maybe was in a church has been moved into a museum, in Italy, it's actually still in the church. And so there were a couple specific churches, actually basilicas, that we wanted to see.
Wow.
And so one of them has been in the news recently. Actually, two of them have been in the news recently with the passing of the Pope. St. Peter's Basilica, certainly, and we'll come back to that one. But the second one was a basilica called Santa Maria Maggiore, which means Saint Mary Major, and it's one of 4 basilicas in Rome that are actually part of the Vatican. They're controlled by the Vatican as opposed to by the sort of the local diocese of Rome. And it's beautiful. That's where the Pope is going to be buried.
Wow.
Actually very ornate, very beautiful, very historic church. It's a fairly common place for first-time visitors or second-time visitors in Rome to go. But we had arranged this tour with an art historian. So we had this art expert who gave us a tour of actually 3 different basilicas in Rome.
And is this just you?
It's 2 people. 2 people were picked up at the hotel with a driver. So, you know, it was August and it was hot. Yeah. Let me tell you, it was very, very hot in Rome. So picked us up right at our hotel, took us right to the church, and we had a chance to spend quite a bit of time, not only in the church, learning as we're there, but as you drive from place to place, the guide could explain things as we went. So it was a really fantastic experience. Yeah. We went to a second church that's called the Basilica of St. Peter in Chains. And the reason it would be famous is because they have a relic there, you know, a historical relic of St. Peter. And supposedly it was the chains that he was held at in prison before he was crucified. Wow. Well, turns out the real reason it's famous is because it contains a sculpture of Moses by Michelangelo.
Oh my gosh.
And Google this sculpture. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
You if you've never seen a Michelangelo work up close, somehow he made the marble come alive.
Really?
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And the story of this statue of Moses is also very interesting.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be for the tomb of a pope named Julius II.
Okay.
And Julius died and ran out of money before his tomb could be built. But Julius did something else that we all know him for. He hired Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel.
Oh my gosh.
In St. Peter's
Basilica.
So Julius was the one who hired him. And if you're a movie buff, there's a great movie called The Agony and the Ecstasy.
Okay.
And Charlton Heston plays Michelangelo. Nice. I think Richard Chamberlain plays Julius II.
Okay.
I think Sophia Loren plays the love interest of Michelangelo. And they're not the Pope's love interest, but the Michelangelo's love interest. And it's an excellent movie about the construction or the painting of St. Peter's and the Sistine Chapel and everything that went into that. So saw that basilica. Saw a third basilica called St. Paul's outside of the walls.
Wow.
Very, very interesting. And then the next day before we headed to Civitavecchia to head on the cruise ship, we went over to St. Peter's.
Okay.
And were able to go to Mass in the church in the morning.
Wow.
And then at noon, the Pope comes out on his little window up on the 5th floor of the Apostolic Palace. So you're quite a ways away. And he does a prayer, kind of a prayer service. So we got to see the Pope give this prayer service. And a little pro tip that we picked up from our guide was that if you go to Mass and then you come out from the basilica itself, you actually get right in front of where the Pope is going to speak. Versus the people who sleep in and don't go to Mass, they have to go with the rest of the crowd. So we got to get a little bit closer and see that. So it was a really neat experience before we had a chance to hop on the cruise. So we saw some different things in Rome that I had never seen before, and it was just a fantastic way to do it. So something we love to do for our clients is to customize a pre-cruise or a post-cruise city stay like that.
Yeah.
But again, the cruise line has some great options as well. And so we kind of like to help folks navigate that.
Yeah. Either way, if you guys are doing it or if you go through Regent or whoever to do that pre-cruise, that's great. That's great. Well, I think that's one of the beauties of working with you and your team is you guys get to ask the questions. Like, let's just talk this through, right? If you're going online, you may not even know the questions.
There's nobody to ask.
Right.
And you don't even know what questions that, you don't know the questions to ask. So it's very, very difficult.
Right. I love it. Great value add for you guys. That's awesome. So you jump on Regent, which is, So I've heard Regent's amazing.
Kind of the bomb.
Yeah.
Kind of
The
one of
bomb.
the
Here we
bombs
go.
of
Yeah.
cruise lines. You know, they are a small ship luxury,
Okay.
all-inclusive cruise line.
Nice. And when you say small ship, tell us like what is
So
it?
this one had about 700 passengers
Okay.
on it. It's actually a little bit of an older ship. It was built in 2007.
Okay.
But they don't let the grass grow on their ships, and they keep them very, very nicely updated. They're remodeled much more frequently than
Okay.
regular cruise ships. So in fact, this ship, the Seven Seas Navigator or Mariner, is heading into dry dock a little bit later this year for another refit.
Okay.
So they keep
Nice.
it really, really up to date. But it's a fantastic cruise. Everything on board is great. We'll talk about the food
Can't wait.
a little bit. But one of the neat things is that all the shore excursions are included.
Wow.
And in every port, you have a choice, not just one, but you have a choice of several complimentary shore excursions that you can choose. And we'll delve into some of those as we kind of go through the ports. But, you know, everything's taken care of. Everything's good to go. And you just get on board and you just enjoy.
And I feel like I should just jump in here real quick. Being the rookie, I did not know when we went on our Alaskan cruise that excursions were extra.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I just didn't know that.
Yep.
I was thinking it was similar to our river cruise experience where they are. So this is a big difference.
Yeah,
here.
there's
This
a
is
huge
big
difference.
deal.
Yeah, river cruises, generally they will include at least one shore
Right.
excursion in port. But as you start to move up the food chain, you know, from good to better and best, they're going to include a choice of more excursions
okay.
and a better caliber
Okay.
of excursions. So that's kind of what sets them apart.
Okay.
And ocean cruising is the same. A lot of cruise lines do not include shore excursions.
Right.
Some may include just one excursion. So it's either this, take it or leave it, or pay for something else.
Yeah.
And Regent includes a choice of excursions. And it was usually 6 to 10 excursions per port
My
that
gosh.
you could choose from. In so many options. I mean, you run out of time before you run out of excursions.
Right. For me, being a math guy, I start to do the math on if I was to go on a cruise that did not have excursions and I need to book them through you. You start running the math on that, and maybe all of a sudden the numbers are, I don't know, getting close to maybe
it is.
Regent caliber numbers. I don't know, Ted.
It is, and I think it's something that I'll oftentimes say to folks who are talking about cruises. You know, we'll talk. There's price, and then there's value.
Yes,
and the value can, the value can make that difference in price go away because you're getting a lot more for your money than you are. You might be paying a lower price up front, but you'll spend more as you travel. Right. So it is a big difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you get on Regent, you go to your stateroom. Is the stateroom just, here we go.
Yeah, staterooms are beautiful.
Yeah.
They're all either mini suites or suites.
Oh my gosh.
And so the difference between a mini suite is, it'll have like a curtain that divides the seating area from the bed. A full suite will have a door between them. So much storage space. I mean, even somebody who traveled with an entire suitcase full of shoes could find a place to put their shoes.
Who would do that?
Oversized bathrooms, and a lot of choices.
That's great.
Of excursions from, the smaller sort of the mini suites up to some really incredible large suites.
Really?
And one thing about suites, sometimes people will say, well, I would never book a suite.
Yeah.
And that may be true. But think about this. If you're traveling with your family and you have a group of 5-10 people,
right,
and you want a place where everybody can get together that's private, those suites are absolutely perfect. They'll have a dining room area, an oversized balcony where you can gather and have, get-togethers and play games and drink cocktails. And they have butlers so they can arrange everything for you, and it's an all-inclusive cruise. So you're not going to pay extra for those canapes and cocktails that you enjoy in your room as well.
That's a really, really great suggestion with a larger group, having a place to congregate.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine that his parents kind of sponsor a trip for the family, and I can totally see his parents doing exactly what you said.
Yeah. And it just makes the trip nicer. Now, certainly for 2 people, you can have plenty of space. You might enjoy a suite. Some of them have 2 bedrooms. So if you're a family, they can be a great way to go. But I think just thinking about a suite from, I don't need to go up to that level of a stateroom. There are a lot of reasons why it does make sense to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Have we talked about food yet? Or we'll come to that.
I am waiting with bated breath over here, Ted.
We went through Rome and we didn't even talk about the food in Rome. But
I know.
We'll come back to food later. We'll make people wait.
We got a problem over here. Awesome. So you want to get us out of the port?
Yeah, so we got out of the port and we headed south, and we basically traveled along the Italian coast. Then we made a left turn and headed over to Greece and Turkey before we headed back up to Croatia and Venice, where the cruise ended. So the first port we visited was on the island of Sicily. I'm sorry, no, the first port was the port of Salerno.
Okay.
And Salerno is one of the ports for Naples. In the Bay of Naples. And we had a chance to do, a variety of excursions. The one I chose was a visit to the town of Sorrento in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we went and toured the ruins of Pompeii.
Oh my gosh.
And it was phenomenal. This was probably one of the top 5 excursions I've ever taken on a cruise ship. Really? Sorrento is beautiful.
Hold on, time out. Top 5?
Yeah, probably top 5.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, Sorrento's beautiful. The drive there is beautiful. It's this charming city on the, sort of right near the Amalfi Coast. So it's kind of like hanging over the edge of the mountainside. You have a view of Mount Etna, which is still steaming in the distance, Mount Vesuvius. Mount Etna is the next day, Mount Vesuvius. And you just had a chance to walk around and explore the city.
Yeah.
They grow a lot of lemons in Salerno.
Really?
And so they have a local spirit that's brewed there called limoncello.
Oh my gosh, I've had limoncello before.
Yes, and so it was morning. It was morning when we were there, so we had a cup of cappuccino at the little cafe overlooking the bay of the Bay of Naples, and then right after that, limoncello.
Oh my gosh,
nice way to start the morning, and just a beautiful, beautiful place. We spent a couple hours there, really just exploring the town independently.
Yeah.
It has a couple churches that are worth poking your head into, and beautiful beach, but the views and stuff like that are what make Sorrento really incredible.
That's amazing.
And then we doubled back to Pompeii.
Okay.
And that was the first time I had ever been to Pompeii.
Okay.
And of course, we all know the story of Pompeii. It was a large city that the volcano, Mount Vesuvius, erupted, and that was it.
Yeah.
It was basically preserved. And the thing to first know is it's a city. So it's a big archaeological site.
Really?
It's huge. And so you do a lot of walking.
Okay.
And it was 100 degrees in the shade. It was very, very hot. We were there in August. But our guide, all guides in Europe are certified by the local tourist authority, essentially. And so our guide was just really an expert in Pompeii. And not only did we get to see some of the kind of main sites that everybody sees in Pompeii,
sure,
he knew where some of the new stuff was being kind of excavated.
Really?
So we got to see some really, really well-preserved ruins where you could actually see the frescoes painted on the wall.
Oh my gosh.
They'd been preserved. They hadn't been destroyed. And so it was really neat because we got a very different perspective on Pompeii than I think everybody else who came that day on their regular tours got.
Right.
And then on the way back to the ship, I made a big boo-boo.
Uh-oh.
I left my phone on the bus.
Oh no, the bus that took you.
Tour bus.
Oh,
and so I freaked out because, this is my phone and, people need to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that one of the ways Regent Seven Seas goes above and beyond with all of their shore excursions is the shore excursion staff goes through every bus and they feel on the seats, they reach into the little pockets,
no way,
and they make sure before the bus leaves that they've given it like the twice over. So literally I was walking down to the front desk to see what I could do about it as the ship was starting to sail into the bay.
Yeah.
And someone said, "Oh, did you lose your phone?" I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness."
Just like that.
Yep. So just like that, they had it. So they really went above and beyond, and that would have been a little bit of a problem if I'd left my phone in a bus in Salerno, Italy. So really an example of how a luxury cruise line goes above and beyond.
I always think that it's the details that take it to that next that next level, right? And this is a perfect example of a detail that they're taking care of. And it's just brilliant.
Yeah. And of course, I was like, "Oh, of course they did that," but you never know until you
don't know, right? Yeah.
And one of the things too about the excursions on cruise lines like Regent that include them all, a lot of people like to make their plans before they get on the ship.
Yeah.
And then it's a really hot day and they decide to change their mind. And so the staff works really, really hard to accommodate that.
Really?
And sometimes people want to sign up for an excursion and it's full.
Yeah.
And there isn't space. almost every single time someone will be able to get on the excursion once they get on the ship, or maybe the day of. Somebody won't show up and they'll be able to go. So people sometimes get really stressed out about that, and I'm just like, relax. It'll all work itself out.
That's awesome. This is another total, being the rookie, I feel I can ask these questions. With Regent, like other cruises, do you try to, or do you book your excursions prior to getting on the ship? Is that how that works?
It is, yeah. And so one of the things is that depending on the category of stateroom you book, that will depend when those shore excursions are available to book. So the better the stateroom you book, the earlier you can book the excursion.
Nice.
But we've never had anybody not be able to do everything they wanted to do. Now, sometimes you have to wait till you're on the ship to do it, but they work very, very hard to make sure everybody can do their first choice. And, once in a very blue moon, they might have to do their second choice.
That's awesome. Are we going to talk food or what's going on?
Well, I guess I have to cut to the chase here.
Ted, you're killing me over here.
So
we're going to talk food.
I hesitate to talk food. No. So one of the things, it's no secret that you and I love our good food.
We do.
And so one of the things we do at my agency is we track the cruises that have a special culinary experience added above and beyond.
Okay.
And we call it the culinary collection.
Nice.
And so these are cruises that, and if you want a list, you can contact us and we can send you a list. But these are cruises where the cruise lines go above and beyond their normal excellent cuisine to elevate it a little more. So in this case, we had a celebrity guest chef on the ship. And his name is Alain Roux, R-O-U-X. He's French. He sounds French. And he owns a restaurant in England called the Waterside Inn. And my number might be wrong, but I believe they have had a Michelin star for 40 years. 40. And I think now they have 3 Michelin stars.
You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. So there is probably no one in the world who's a better chef than Alain Roux. His father was named Michel Roux, who founded the restaurant. And he was there too, but he's kind of semi-retired. And so he gave talks about cooking. He did cooking demonstrations. But on board the ship, they have a French restaurant called Chartreuse.
Okay.
And so he did a takeover for the cruise.
Oh my gosh.
And he created his own menu that was different than the regular menu in Chartreuse.
Wow.
And so I actually looked it up when we were doing our show prep.
Yeah.
And I now I take pictures of my menus and my meals so I can remember what I had.
Yeah.
It started out with something called foie gras.
I've heard
in
of
the
that.
style of Grenoble, which is a city in France. And basically it means they pan fry the foie gras.
Okay.
It was a slice of heaven.
Oh my gosh.
I just have to say it was an absolute slice of heaven with like an orange sauce on it. For the main course for dinner, it was a filet, a wood-grilled filet, just perfectly prepared.
Yeah.
Perfectly prepared. And then it came with a side dish that I was very skeptical of, but I eventually fell in love with it.
Yeah.
It is a tarte tatin, which is like it's kind of what we would call like an apple pie. It's a flaky pie crust, but it was made with onions.
What?
Like French onion soup onions. And that was the side instead of potatoes. And it was just absolutely incredible.
Just perfect.
It was just perfect. And then dessert and everything. And on Regent Seven Seas, they have several specialty restaurants. This particular ship had 3. Chartreuse, they have a steakhouse, excellent steakhouse. They have an Italian restaurant, kind of an alfresco Italian restaurant, plus the main dining room.
Wow.
And every guest can make 1 reservation in each restaurant per cruise.
Okay.
Well, we begged and got to go to Chartreuse twice. During the cruise.
Wow.
And I wanted to take that foie gras. I wanted to take that steak home with me. It was just absolutely phenomenal. And all the rest of the food on the ship is
amazing.
Notch. But this was, in the stratosphere of food. So
that's
it
amazing.
really, really made this experience, there was nothing ordinary about it, but it elevated it to a degree that was just incredible, I thought. So the food, top notch.
Awesome.
And that was just the food on the ship.
Yeah.
In some of the ports, one of the nice things is you have a chance to walk around. In Sicily, the next place we went to, they have something called granita. And it's kind of like an Italian ice.
Oh,
I think.
okay.
So it's kind of an icy, like somewhere between a sorbet and an ice cream.
Okay.
And in Sicily, they make it a little different with a lot of different flavors.
All right.
And so the next day, our tour was to the city of Taormina and to the ancient Roman theater. And it's this beautifully preserved theater. And when you look straight ahead, there's Mount Etna steaming in the background. And actually, right at the entrance to the theater is the hotel where they filmed the first season of The White Lotus.
No way.
So, yeah.
Fun show.
But anyway,
Fun
hot
show.
day, 100 degrees in the shade.
Yeah.
And at the top of the theater, there's a little kind of an outdoor park area. And so I had some granita there.
That's
and
awesome.
It was so hot, but it was so good. Just overlooking, you could actually see the Italian mainland and the Straits of Messina. I mean, just beautiful. The scenery alone here was worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
And then you throw in there this beautiful theater and the history of the little town of Taormina and fantastic experience.
That's awesome.
And they made it painless. Get off the ship, get on the coach, off you go. Don't have to think anymore. The guide's going to explain everything to you. You're going to see everything you need to see, and you're not going to miss the ship.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
That is definitely one aspect that I really enjoyed was there wasn't a lot of like, where do we go? What do we do? It's just like when you get off, in some cases, the captain is saying, hey, have a great time. And then you go off and then you're on your coach bus and away you go. It's just, there's something about that just peace of mind. For me, I'm a huge planner. Like I want my day, like I want to know like, where am I going and what time and when do I need to wake up and to have them take a little bit off the, what do you call it? Put a worry into the,
put the worries into your carry-on bag and leave them at home.
Yes.
Yeah. And the nice thing too, is that we were in port all day.
Yeah.
And so you could have actually done a morning excursion and an afternoon excursion. Wow. Well, we decided to just stay and relax at the pool and have a leisurely breakfast.
Why
and then we
wouldn't
did the afternoon excursion. And so it's a really nice way to do it and a very civilized way to explore.
I like that.
Sicily.
Well, tell me just a little bit about, you mentioned the pool. Are there a couple amenities? I would assume maybe a pool, a hot tub, a little sun
so they
deck
have a nice, a fairly large sun deck. It's got a nice big pool. It's got a couple hot tubs, beautiful spa as well. And anyone can go into the spa, like the steam room and the sauna.
Oh, okay.
There's a gym. There's a walking track. Nice. Everything that a big ship is going to have, just on a smaller scale. And then in the evening, different cocktail lounges.
Yeah.
They kind of have the observation lounge and the piano lounge and the
fun.
little more active sort of disco type lounge. And so, something for everybody before dinner.
Love it.
And in the main dining room, you don't make dinner reservations.
Okay.
You can just go whenever you want to. So some people like to eat early. Some people like to eat late. And you can do, pretty much from 6 to 9 p.m. you can pop in and have dinner.
That's really nice. And then you said on this Regent there were 3 specialty restaurants as well. So you had main dining and then 3 other restaurants.
Correct.
That's awesome.
Yep. And room service.
Oh,
and pretty much the full menu in the dining room is available in room service.
No way.
So if you want to have a dinner, romantic dinner on the balcony, easy enough. And, the breakfast menu for breakfast in bed is endless.
Oh my gosh.
So you're very spoiled. You're very, very well taken care of.
That's
and
great.
They have, I think, my favorite amenity of all travel amenities.
Tell me.
They have free valet laundry.
Oh my gosh.
So you put it in a bag, you put it on the door, and the next day it comes back all folded, wrapped in tissue, and clean.
And that's part of the
package. But think how much less you have to pack.
Yeah.
And you can do it every day. It's unlimited. So every day you could wash your socks, and you could travel with 2 pairs of socks. And
interesting.
It's very practical.
I like that.
I like it because it's a very luxury touch. Nobody folds my laundry in tissue paper at home, but it's a luxury touch, but it's so practical.
Yeah.
And especially when it's hot, and you go through two t-shirts a day.
That's true.
Just send it off and back it comes.
I like that a lot. That I would definitely be taking advantage of that all the time.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it is a great amenity.
Excellent. Where are we off to next? What's our next port?
We visited couple different ports. The next one we visited was Santorini, which is that very famous island in the Greek islands. And I have to tell you, so Santorini's on your bucket list, right?
100%.
And what put it on your bucket list? Views, scenery?
I think both. Like the views, like just you see pictures of Santorini and it's just like, oh my gosh, my camera would be out nonstop. I would have my GoPro somewhere on me. You know what I mean? Like I would be catching as much footage as I could because it would be great. Yeah.
It is probably one of the most beautiful of the Greek islands.
Yeah.
It has some very interesting ruins. that have been excavated as well.
Really?
And a little pro tip, there's a ruin called Akrotiri
Okay.
in on the island of Santorini that's well worth a visit, and a lot of excursions will offer that as an option.
Okay.
There's a legend that Santorini was Atlantis. And so this ruin is from the Minoan civilization, which was on the island of Crete a long time ago. That was like the bull who was in the maze. Remember from Greek mythology?
Sure, yeah.
So very, very ancient civilization, pre kind of classical Greece. And so it's very, very well excavated because the island blew up. Right. Another volcano went boof and the whole island went away. And supposedly that's how Atlantis ended up at the bottom.
Interesting. I love that.
But the problem with Santorini is it's very crowded.
Really?
It's extremely crowded. And especially if you're there on a day when some of the big ships are going to be in town, and several of them, it can actually be quite unpleasant.
Yeah.
And so Santorini, regardless of which cruise you're on, I think you always want to do a cruise excursion there because they will get you back to the ship. But the neat thing that Regent did is they had a lot of excursions that let you avoid the crowded areas.
No way.
So they had a catamaran trip that took you to this tiny little island across the bay from the main part of Santorini, like it was the one piece of that side of the volcano that was still above water. Wow. And you got to just have a relaxing day at the beach. They had a little taverna there. You could have your gyro and your, ouzo and some Greek wine and enjoy it. Santorini has some beautiful vineyards on it as well. So there are a lot of things you can do that avoid the really, really touristy stuff where it is really, really overcrowded.
What an excellent idea by Regent to do that. I mean, what a great play.
Yeah, because you can see the scenery from the ship. You can see it from the from the water and see it that way, but then do something interesting that isn't going to just dump you in a very, very crowded, dirty,
that's
loud,
awesome.
Hot place.
I got to ask just real quick, because you've mentioned the weather, the temperature a little bit. Are there times of the year that you would say this is kind of the ideal time to go, or is it like, tell me a little bit more. You went in August. Remember that, right?
In August, yeah. So the Mediterranean is a warmer climate than we would have here in the upper Midwest.
Sure.
Spring, March, April, nice time to go. Okay. I think actually September, October, November is a great time to go because it's cooler. There are a lot fewer tourists because a lot of the Europeans who are taking those close to home vacations, for them, Greece is a 2-hour flight. So it's a very close to home destination. They're not there.
Yep.
So it's a little less crowded from a tourist perspective. The weather is nicer, but the water's still warm.
Yeah.
It warms up in the summer and it stays warm into October and even early November. You could maybe wouldn't swim, but October you could certainly swim in the Mediterranean and Greece. And so definitely those kind of beginning and end of the season times I think are great.
That's awesome.
There are cruises that operate in the Mediterranean year round.
Really?
Though. And the weather is generally very pleasant. In January, it might be 60s and 70s, so still relatively pleasant. So it's a year-round cruise destination, but I'd say March, April, May, late September, October, November.
Okay.
Probably the best blend of weather and things to see and do, because some things close down for the year.
Oh, I suppose. Well. Yeah, I suppose. Awesome. All right, so Santorini, and then any other highlights in Santorini?
No, that was kind of it.
Love it.
And then we headed to Turkey.
What?
Yep. To the city of Ephesus.
Turkey. Wow.
Turkey, where the Thanksgiving turkeys come from. And the city of Ephesus is one of the best preserved Greek cities from antiquity.
Wow.
And so the tour of Ephesus, I would say, is probably the best preserved, the best excavated of the Greek landmarks all across the Mediterranean.
Wow.
And one of the things we do at our agency is on certain cruises, we arrange a special excursion for our guests.
Okay.
And so in this particular case, that excursion was in Ephesus.
Wow.
And so it was a group of 12 people, and we had 2 guides. The guides were excellent. And so the first thing is we headed up to the top of the hill to a little house where the Virgin Mary spent her retirement.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so her retirement home was in Ephesus. So you have a chance to tour that. It's a very famous pilgrimage site.
That's awesome.
Actually. And then you head down to the bottom of the hill, and that's the city
of
Ephesus.
Nice.
And the walking tour, amazing. The sights, history, the stories about what you see. There's a public commode there, so you can see what a public restroom was like in Greek times.
Wow.
And then we had a chance to do something, and this is another pro tip that I'll say. In Ephesus, there's a piece of the ruins called the terrace houses. And as the name suggests, they're on kind of a terrace on the edge of the main street. And that's where the wealthy people in Ephesus lived.
Okay.
Very, very well preserved. And you go into them, they're covered. And the first thing you see are floors that are covered with preserved frescoes. Those little tiles, all inlaid tile. I guess not frescoes, but inlaid tile floors. And they're just amazing. And you think, this was 2,500 years ago that these things were built. And they're, quite well preserved. So Ephesus is just a place of incredible wonder.
Yeah.
History, the library has been partially restored. So there's a 3-story facade that they've been able to re-erect.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, Ephesus used to be on the ocean, but they had a couple earthquakes, and now it's about 40 miles from the coast.
No way.
Yeah, so it's really quite a bit of change in the topography there.
Wow.
And then we did the one thing you absolutely have to do in Turkey. You have to go to the Turkish rug store. And even if you're not going to buy one, you have to haggle to buy a rug.
I've heard
let
stories.
me tell you, those guys are not going to take no for an answer. And the rugs are just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I would say, if you're in the market for one, do your research, know what you'd like to spend, but it's a great place, at the right places to purchase an authentic Turkish rug. But just to go there and just to do the haggling a little bit is kind of an interesting
That's fun
thing.
So you got into the mix there? You haggled
I did,
a little,
and we were
bit?
building a house at the time, so I was kind of like, well, maybe I need a new Turkish rug, but I managed to avoid that.
That's funny. That is funny.
Yeah. So we headed back kind of through the Greek islands, up along the coast of Croatia. We stopped in the city of Dubrovnik.
Yep.
And again, this is where there's some interesting choices of excursions. So some people did a kayak tour around the old walls of the city of Dubrovnik.
Wow.
And Dubrovnik is one of the few really perfectly preserved walled cities in Europe. So they got to go kayaking around it, went to a little island, got to go for a swim, kayak back.
Wow.
Needless to say, I don't kayak. So I took the foodie tour. Again, you kind of get the sense of a trend here. And so we had a little bit of time to explore the city, the walled city.
Yeah.
And then we headed about 30 miles out into the country to an authentic little farm. And the family-owned farm. And so we got there, and they had a little basket of dates. So everybody got a date that was grown on the farm. And then they came around with the local version of moonshine. And they call it rakia, Rakija. And basically it's moonshine. And you get a little tiny shot of it.
This is great.
Apparently it's meant to be sipped, but it's, light your breath on fire afterwards.
Yeah,
So
look out.
Take your shot of rakia. And then they had sort of some folks who were from a local cultural center who did some, historic kind of local dancing and stuff like that. But they had cheese and local meats and bread and stuff. And so we sat outside, under sort of awnings and just enjoyed it. And,
fun.
Local Croatian wine, which is actually really, really good wine. But, a little glass of rakia will put a sparkle on your day.
I kind of want to try some of that.
It's not even noon anywhere here. So we'll bring some back the next time.
Ooh, that sounds great.
Yeah. And then it was back to Venice. And that's where the cruise ended.
Oh, really?
And we'll have to do an episode on cruising Venice sometime because it's quite a complicated situation now because they've banned cruise ships from the cruise ship terminal.
Really?
So all the cruise lines have had to figure out different ways to do things. But Regent Seven Seas was on the ball. And so we had a great time in Venice and then spent one more night in Venice before we flew home.
Okay.
And again, arranged for a guide to give us a walking tour of Venice.
Awesome.
And so we saw the major attractions, St. Mark's Square, the cathedral, which is astonishing. I mean, Venice was like Singapore. It's such a wealthy place. But then there's a Guggenheim Art Museum in Venice, and there are quite a few other churches and cathedrals that nobody's ever even heard of, but they're absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
When you get away from the real tourist center of Venice, it's a whole different place.
Right.
So it's very, very interesting to have a day there. And then flew home from Venice. But the cool thing is you don't take a car or a motor coach to the airport. You take a water taxi.
Oh my gosh.
So we took a water taxi from the hotel. It pulls up and, Senor Blank, your water taxi is here. And you walk down and they put your luggage in, and it's one of those beautiful wooden boats.
I was just going to ask.
They give you a glass of Prosecco and poof, off you go into the airport. So what a way to end the trip. I mean, it was just absolutely fantastic.
Great. Like you said, what a great way to end a trip. You're a water taxi. That's probably a Chris Craft or some sort of awesome, old school boat.
Yeah. It was really neat. And so this is pretty typical. This was a 10-night Mediterranean cruise. So it's a pretty typical length for people. And if you did a pre and a post, you'd be probably about 14 days, which is just about right for kind of a shorter time in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And we saw so much. Really we saw Italy, Greece, Greek civilization, little something different in Croatia. So you kind of got 4 different flavors in there. Fantastic cruise. Everything just well taken care of.
Awesome.
And came back even at the end of August after being outside in 100-degree weather, pretty refreshed, pretty relaxed. So it is a example, I think, of kind of the best of cruising to the Mediterranean.
That's awesome. How do we get in touch with you and the team and figure out how to do an awesome cruise like this?
Yeah, well, the best way to get in touch with us is to visit our website. It's tedblanktravel.com. Or you can give our office a call at 651-964-8245. And myself or one of my team of cruise experts would be happy to help you plan a cruise like this. And if you're interested in things culinary, we can get you down the right path for a culinary experience like mine.
Yeah, that was a fun fact. I did not know that you did that, Ted.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
I was looking at the pictures when I was getting ready for this show, and I was thinking, boy, I have to see if old Elan is going to be on another cruise ship sometime soon and pop on board.
What a treat that had to be. I can't even imagine a Michelin star chef cooking on the ship for you.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing. Well, thanks for jumping on. Again, that's my expert, our expert, Ted Blank. He runs Ted Blank Travel, Luxury Travel and Adventures. I'm Ken Conan, the rookie. Thanks for tuning in to our TED Talks Cruises.